Well, welcome everybody to our webinar where we're going to review all the new features in release number 1.89. It's very gratifying for the whole SmartBuild team to see the great attendance, which has just been growing continuously. Hopefully that's a sign that people are really excited about the features that we're getting in our software. And we're very excited about just maintaining this pace. And I'll talk just a little bit about our future direction here. But first, just kind of rules of the road. So today, Sean McFeely, our product manager, is going to run you through all the new features in 1.89. Usually we end up consuming about 40 minutes or so going through all that. And then we like to open it up to general question and answer because it's a real useful time, and we have a lot of our team members here, including Mark Jones, our technical director. So we can answer very, very specific questions and even do deep dives. So you can look forward to that at the latter portion of this meeting here today. So the way we do this is we're going to have everybody muted, so it's not like the Tower of Babel as Sean goes through his presentation. So everybody will be muted. However, you can see the chat button in the upper right-hand corner, that cloud. Just go ahead and click on that. And if you have a question during the course of his presentation, feel free to go there and click on that and just type in your question or comment. Our comments are very welcome too. Our whole team is sitting here listening very anxiously, okay? So we'd love to get comments as well. And then what'll happen is one of our team members will feed that question to Sean so that he can digest it just through a text and then answer questions as we go. So you don't have to hold your questions till the very end if they come up during the course of Sean's review of a feature. And just so everybody knows as well, you can see the record button in the upper left-hand corner. We record all of these webinar sessions. It will be posted and accessible from our website later on today. Typically takes a few hours before it's ready. And so you can share that and share a link with other people on your team if they were unable to attend. Okay, so anyway, that's how we're going to move forward today. And so for today's release, there's just a whole plethora, a variety of different kinds of features. So it's not headlined by just one major enhancement. So I'll let Sean go through that. Don't want to steal his thunder. But I do want to let everybody on our customer base know as well that even right now, of course, we're working on 1.90, and 1.90, big feature there, is that we're working on the ability to design 2 levels of interior framing for barndominiums. So barndominiums continue to be the hot topic for almost everybody that I talk to. So we're anxious to add to those capabilities. I think this is going to be a really important one. And so we'll continue to fine-tune that now that we'll have the ability to design lofts, mezzanines, and 2 stories of interior living. But as we all know, there's going to be tremendous detail that will follow because there's so many things you can do when you're designing a residence. So that is probably a never-ending process. But we will, in conjunction with some other software vendors, in the first quarter of next year, building some productivity tools that will greatly facilitate the generation of full drawing sets for buildings and for barndominiums and office spaces, okay? So more to come on that later, but keep that in mind. So if you're having to go to outside sources to have drawings made, or if you do them internally and it's taking a lot of time, because that's the feedback I get, it takes a lot of time, we're going to have some productivity tools that will dramatically reduce that time. And that'll be coming up likely in the first quarter of next year, okay? So high level, that's what's in the immediate future. And of course, with every release, we have a large number of small enhancements, bug fixes, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I'll just hand it off to Sean and just say, well, I hope you guys enjoy the show. And we look forward to getting, release after release into your hands. So take it away, Sean.
All right, thank you, Keith. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, so quite a lot to go through this morning. Before we get going, one thing I want to point out again, we've been doing this probably the last 3 or 4 releases. I am on the beta site. So right now, this latest software is on the beta site. We plan to release this out into the wild so that you would have it on your system tomorrow evening. And that will depend if we find bugs or issues. We will fix those and probably need to delay the release. But so far, it's looking pretty good. We do have customers like you beta testing, and you can also get on the site. If you put beta in front of the web address that you use, it will take you to a beta site and you can log in. It's the same credentials that you use on your everyday system. And you can get into the beta site and play around with some of this stuff, and really just, you could run a few jobs. It does help us when people do that because there's just so many different types of settings and combinations and different ways that people use the software that it'd be a good idea for you just to check your stuff quickly even. And if you run into any issues, let us know. But we are doing quite a bit of testing on this, so this hopefully will be available to you on your live site Thursday morning. Okay, so I'm going to run through all these. There's quite a bit here, so it's going to be maybe a bit of a whirlwind. Like he said, we do record this. We will have question time at the end. Also, you can call support afterwards, even once we release this, and they can give you some tips and pointers and help you out. And we can also set up some training if we need to, or we can do a more in-depth dive. Okay. So I'm going to jump in here. The way that I think we're going to do this, I'm going to go into the settings. There's quite a few items that require settings changes potentially. And we'll run through several things in the settings, and then we'll go into a job and we'll see how those work in the job. And then there's a few other things in the job that we'll look at that don't really require settings. I think the first thing we'll jump into, we might as well just jump into this, is kind of the biggest item here. It's these output categories. And people have asked for this for quite a while. And we finally have implemented this. And so under the settings, if you do go into the output categories, you're going to see something like this. And what this allows you to do is in the job, those job review categories, I think we have framing and sheathing and trim and all of the other ones that we have. And I've adjusted these already. So I came in here before on my beta system, and it used to be framing and sheathing and trim, and doors and windows and accessories, and I think labor and freight were in here as well. I've come in here into the settings and I've changed my categories for the job review to roof, wall, foundation, doors and windows, accessories. So these guys actually just left. I added this foundation, and the roof and wall, I think I just renamed those. So you can come in here and customize these job review tabs. One thing you can do here, you can just come in and double click here and you can type whatever you want in here and rename that. You can also just add a new one here. So if you add a new one, this could be anything that you want it to be. You can change the order of these. So you come in here and you can change how these are ordered. So this is going to change the order of the job review tabs themselves. You can delete items out of here. So this is going to give you the ability to customize the job review categories. And so in these job review categories are going to be, different materials. And really, we call them usages in SmartBuild. It's really the different types of materials that you have in these different categories. And so the next level of this, and what I did here is I went into the roof and I added all the stuff that I wanted in the roof tab. So just everything that's in the roof. And the way I've done this is, all the framing, the trim, and the panels for the roof are in here. I also did the trusses. So I have the gable truss and my trusses in here. I have ridge cap, I have purlins. And the way that this works is there's going to be the list that you have now. If you don't want to change anything with this, you don't have to. It's going to be exactly the same. When you first come in here, you're going to see the exact same categories. You're going to see all the usages that are currently set up in those different categories. And what you can do is come in here and you can kind of go through this list and multi-select whatever you want, and you'll be able to move these. So if I wanted to move these particular items to the wall tab, then I could just click on wall and it's going to put those into the wall tab. So the best way to do that is get these set up the way you want, and then just come into here and just select the ones that you want and just move them around and kind of leave the ones you want in the category you want. You'll have to kind of play with it a little bit, and it is going to take a little bit of messing around with some of these usages. You may not know exactly what they do, and so you might have to kind of do some tests, go look at some jobs and see what actually shows up in what category, and you might have to come back in here. But basically, you can just go through this list and you can move these to any category that you create, any category that you want. The other thing that you can do is you can order these usages. So again, you can use these arrows to move these around. So if I wanted the end rafter to be right after the purlin, when we get into a job, if we have a job with purlins and an end rafter, on the roof job review tab, you're going to see this order. So purlins are going to be at the top, then end rafter, and then honestly, I don't even know what this is. So some of these are things that you don't necessarily use, but so it's going to be in this order. So you can set up the order of these usages the way that they show up. You can customize these tabs. You can customize the order of these tabs. And these are going to reflect in a number of different ways. This is going to show up on like the tokens. You are going to get total prices now for these. And we'll get into the job. This will be a little more clear. But you will get total prices for your roof tab, total price, wall tab, total price, foundation, total price. And those will be those tokens you can use in document templates and sales quotes and that kind of thing. The packages and the assemblies, any sort of calculations you have set up on these should still work. Where these actually end up going in your packages might be an issue that you'll have to fix, and we'll see that in a job. So this is something we didn't do right away because it's kind of complicated. It just in the number of connections that it makes throughout the program. So you will have to come in here, do some changes, mess around with this list. There may be some changes in the packages and assemblies that you'll have to adjust. And you might have to adjust your document templates if you do have like a total price used in your templates for any of these categories. And we'll look at that more once we get into a job. So this one's kind of a big one. There's kind of a lot of connections, but if you do want to take advantage of this, I know a lot of people have asked for this. There's a lot of flexibility here. It might take a little bit of time to get all of this worked out, but it's all here and available for you to customize these job review tabs. And we'll talk about this more once we get into the job. I guess the other thing I should mention here, this upload and download, this is really to help you to kind of save your changes in a way. And this is similar to the packages and how they work right now. It's if you hit download here, you're going to get basically a copy of what is happening here right now. all these categories in the order. It is a JSON file, which is like a file that the computer uses really, or the program uses. So this isn't something like our pricing where you can upload and download changes. It's really just a way to save a snapshot in time of what you have right now. So might not be a bad idea when you first start out to take a download of this, and then you would have it, and then you can make all kinds of changes. If you don't like it, if it gets out of whack, you can upload that, and it's going to re-upload your whatever point in time you downloaded that JSON file. So when you hit upload, you can just go and look for that JSON file, and you can rename that when you upload it. It's just going to put you back to wherever you were before. You can also hit restore defaults. It'll take you back to the original setup that you guys actually have right now on your systems. It'll take you back to those original defaults that we have from the beginning. So a couple things here that you can do. You can restore. You can also basically upload and download a snapshot in time of these. Okay, so that's kind of a lot in there. I ran through that quick, but we'll talk about it a little bit more, and we can also do some training with you if we need to. Okay, another item here in the setup wizard that we're going to look at, and I'm just going to leave here. I'm not going to save anything. This is going to be something that's new in the sheathing tab. And so if I go into the sheathing here in the setup wizard, and I'm going to go to this ag panel that I have in my system here at the top, double click on here. The new item here, if you want to be able to use this, it's called the extension. So this is a request we had from some people for roofs mainly, but you can use this for walls as well. But really all this is going to do is I'm going to get 3 inches of additional length on this particular ag panel. So if I go into a job, no matter what I use it for, or what job I use it for, if I use this ag 40-year 29 gauge panel, I'm going to get 3 additional inches on that panel. So it's at the level of the material, and it's just always going to show up on this panel when I add this in. We have some margins at the job level where you could add or subtract to this. But this is just an additional material level extension that you can add that just automatically is going to add this in. We went over some of these other ones before where you can set up a max length and it'll cut off a panel at that length, and then it'll start a new panel. This underlap is going to kind of underlap this panel and add an additional panel length with the underlap. You can do the minimum cut length, where basically anything below the length you put in here, it's going to put any panel shorter than this length into the minimum cut length. So if you just want 2-foot panels as your minimum cut, you can put 2 foot here, and it's going to basically round everything below that up to 2 foot. This is another setting here at this material level where basically you're just going to add any sort of additional length you want here. In my case, it's going to be 3. I'll show you this in a job just to kind of try to drive it home. But for this ag panel, I'm getting 3 inches of additional length. If we go to like this G-rib, I have nothing here, so I'm not getting any additional lengths for my G-rib panel. But if you do want to use this for some reason, this is at the material level. You come in here to the setup wizard, and like I did there, I added in 3 inches for the ag panel. And you can have different lengths for any of your materials that you have in here. So just wanted to point that out. We'll look at that a little bit more in the job. Okay, one other thing I wanted you guys to be aware of, a new item that we have here is what we call the vendor description. And really the main use for this is if you are like a supplier and you have builders, and those builders don't like the descriptions that you use for your materials, you can have a different vendor description for the builders. Builders can basically put in their own descriptions of these materials. So you could use a supplier material, you can use the pricing, you can use the different stocked lengths. So as a builder, you can use all those, but now you can change the description of those. And so you could come in and the way that this is done is you just type in something new for a description here. So as a builder now for this LVL, if that's used in a job on the material list, you're going to see new instead of the other description that the supplier used. I probably don't want to really do this, but and you do set this up just coming in here and manually doing this right here, right now. So I think, okay, yeah, so one example that I had in here is instead of this pressure treated 2x6 with the length, which is kind of what I have set up, I just put in pressure treated as the description. So when we go into the job, you'll see, and in this case, I'm actually going to be using my main builder here, but it still will work. If for some reason you want to override your own description of the material, you can do that, but it's really set up for builders to be able to override that description, put in their own description for these different materials that are going to show up on all their material lists and stuff, but it's still going to connect with the pricing and the different lengths and the SKU at the supplier level. And we'll see this in a job. Hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. This is not available right now in the downloads. You do have to do this vendor description manually, but one of the other items I wanted to point out while we're here is under the pricing, we switched up how these downloads work a little bit. So before, the way this worked is you would download your pricing list and then you can use it for different purposes. But a lot of times what people use this for was to download this list, change the pricing, and upload. We just made a kind of some shortcuts here where if you want to download just the cost and the price of this list, if that's how you do your pricing, where you adjust the cost and price, if you select this, when you hit download, actually download down here, once you make these choices, it's going to download just the cost and price, the SKU, the actual description, and then the cost and price. And then you can adjust the price here and you can re-upload that with the new pricing. Some people, though, will use cost and markup. They'll just adjust the markup to get to the price. If you hit download here, might as well just do this, then you're going to end up with your cost and your markup, and you can adjust it that way. You can come back in, you can upload that, and it's going to adjust your pricing based on the markup, really. The other option here is just what we used to do, and that's everything. So you're going to get all these different columns. So if you need that still, you can still use that. And then again, we still have the CSV versus the more Excel kind of version of this. And most people, I think, are using the Excel version. I think CSV is more if you're communicating between programs, but you do have that option. You can use either one of these and you can hit the download. So just wanted to point that out, explain that. Okay, so I think that's really about it. We do have this vendor description change. You can set up that extension on your panels if you want to in the setup wizard. And then, of course, those output categories where there's a lot that you can change and set up with those. So those are all the settings. So now what I want to do is we'll hop over here into a job and we'll take a look at those setting changes, and then we'll also get into some other stuff. So quite a bit going on here. So I'm going to load up this job that I worked on before. It's going to load up our pricing and our materials and all the framing in the 3D model. So here it is. This is the job that I have set up. I guess one thing that's pretty obvious here that I'll just point out, we can now set up our wall material to be none. So as you can see, I have a wainscot down here at the bottom. This is actually my upper sheathing that I have set up here. And then for my main wall panels, I have set that to none. So we kind of have our breeze coming through here. And that's something we couldn't do before, is kind of a bug of sorts. Now you can do that, no problem. You can set that up as none for this type of a building. The other thing that may jump out at you here is I have a bunch of skirt boards here stacked up. We have changed this up to where before I think we had either stacked or not stacked, and you got one or two. And this is another item that people have asked for quite a while. I typed in 6 skirt boards here, rows, 6 rows of skirt boards of my pressure treated 2x6. And you can adjust how these get laid out in relation to grade, you know, and how these get laid out. I just have mine at 0, sitting right on grade, and then I'm stacking these up. 6 rows of skirt boards. And as you can see that we do have these now that will stack. These are on my material list. And yeah, maybe we'll just jump right into the job review here now. So we do have the skirt boards, so you can change up those. You can go into individual walls and do those skirt boards in the advanced edit, or you can do them as a full job like I did here. I just changed all those skirt boards. But let's take a look at our job review now. So you can see that what I set up there in the settings is reflected here: roof, wall, foundation, doors, windows, accessories. And if we go into the roof, you will see that you know, the order, I had the purlins at the very top. So we do have purlins for this job, and they are coming in. One thing I didn't really talk about that I probably should have pointed out, in those settings, there's color and angle. And because I have both trim and framing here, the trim, it makes sense to have the angle and the color. So I did include those here. It doesn't really make any sense for the framing type members, but it does make sense for our trim members. I think like for foundation, I just turned those off. So in the settings, you can turn off the color and the angle if you just don't want those. For the roof, you know, it doesn't necessarily make sense for the framing, but it does work for the trim. So I did include those. And you can see I do have the trusses here. I completely got rid of that trusses tab, and I have those just part of the roof. And again, the order is according to what I have set up, and all the different usages and types of materials are being added to these different tabs according to how I set these up. So this is going to reflect in the job. The order is going to reflect. This is going to also affect things like the material outputs, like the job bid reports. Those are going to now be according to these different reviews. So you can go into your job review, and for example, I set one up for a job bid of the wall and the foundation only. And I did have to go in and adjust these. If you change your tabs, you're going to have to adjust some of these outputs. So I have this job bid that just is showing the foundation and the wall and foundation is just how I set this one up. So you can get some different outputs with these different categories if you want, and it will reflect the order of these as well and the names of these. So that's one of those items that you'll have to change up and adjust if you do change these, but they will reflect.
Sean, are you showing that document?
Oh, no, I'm not. Nope. You'll have to take my word for it on that one. I'll show you next time. You have to switch up the tabs or switch up what you're showing. But so those will reflect on the job bids. Okay, so another thing I'll point out while we are here is for the roof, I'm using the G-rib panel, which we'll see right here for the roof. And you'll see it's 1510. Just to point out that other setting, if we switch over to this ag panel, which I put the 3-inch extension on, if I change that up, we'll see here that we should get 16.1. So it just added 3 inches automatically. And that happens at the material level. You can't change that here. But we could, you can come in here and we have this margin for the roof. If I just wanted to get rid of that, if I say -3 here, then it's going to put us back at 1510. So you can still adjust, you can add and subtract. That extension is just at the material level. So if you use that ag panel and you have that extension, it's just going to show up here. Something to be aware of. The other thing here we can take a quick look at, just to circle around to our settings. For my demo system here, I did change that description to treated plate as opposed to like a pressure treated 2x6. So that did override the description of this material here in the job review. So a builder, or if you want to override that yourself, you can override what these are all called. If you just want this to say G-rib instead of all this information, if you just use one G-rib, you could override this just to show G-rib and it wouldn't have this full description. And then that's going to reflect in all your material outputs as well. So that's how those are going to come through. Okay, so yeah, there's still more here, quite a lot going on in this particular release. So those are kind of the settings. We got through all those, and we did some settings. We have the number of skirt boards. You can get rid of this wall panel of none. I think what we'll do at this point, another kind of big item here is specifically for the wall steel at porches, we can now cut that steel. So this is something that people have been waiting for a long time as well. But you can cut this wall steel for your porches. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to add a porch. I'll put it here on this left side. So I'm going to click on porch. I think I might need to raise the ceiling up a bit here. I'll do rafters, though this is going to work the same way with trusses. The way this is set up right now, it is per porch. So I'm putting on this porch and it is under the advanced settings and it's down at the bottom here. And I think unfortunately, you're gonna have to adjust this for each porch at this point. So if you want this wall sheathing to cut when you add this porch, you need to click on the cut wall sheathing. If we leave this at 0, so these two work together here, the cut wall sheathing, the cutout section. If you leave it at 0, it's just going to put a splice in that panel, or just going to cut those wall panels to where you'll have whatever the length is here, it's going to just cut it, and you're going to have another length of panel up above. But you can put in additional lengths here. Like I think I have some sort of a plate here that is a 2x10. I'm just going to put in 9.5 inches here. Yeah, we'll just put in 9.5 inches. And everything else here, I'm just going to leave the same. We're just going to hit apply, and then you'll see that it is going to cut these panels, and it is going to give me a 9.5 inch just opening basically here. And it's a little bit hard to see. but you can, I guess you can see here that this panel does run up. It's stopping at the almost at the bottom of this 2x10, and then it's continuing up above there.
Unmuted.
And let's see, what's a good way to show this to you? If I zoom in here,
Yeah.
you can see on the inside here that it cut this panel right here. You can see a little bit of a gap down at the bottom of this, and then there's no panel here, and then it continues a panel right up at the top of the framing. So the way that this works is it's going to go from the top of your porch roof framing, and that's where it's going to make that cut. So if we have that at 0, it just would have cut that panel right there. So we'd have a panel running up to the top of the roof framing, it'd be cut, and then there'd be another panel running up from there. And in this case, it took 9.5 inches down and kind of just cut that panel and pulled it back here so that this one is stopping at that 9.5 inches from the top of the framing. I'm using flush purlins here, so it's basically going right to the top. If you do use purlins on top, it's going to be at the top of those purlins and then pull it down. So that's the way really that works. And you can, you have to adjust that per porch that you put in.
I think if you go to the sheeting drawing for that wall,
yeah.
It'll show up.
Okay. That's a good idea. Yeah, so here's this EXT1, and if we zoom in here, and so yeah, you can see we have the wainscot panel. Here's that first panel that's going up to the bottom of my kind of ridge or my ledger board, and then this distance here would be 9.5 inches from the top of that framing, and then we have our upper panel. Yeah, so that's a pretty big feature. That's something we've wanted to do for a long time. You know, we're making progress on these porches. We still have some work to do with some of the trim and things. One of the items that we're working on for the next release is with the awnings, actually finishing those up. We'll be adding the trim and the different like side panels, and extending the ceiling liner for those awnings, kind of those cantilever little eyebrows that come out. And that's going to be something that we'll be adding some additional trim that we know we need for the porches as well. So we keep working on these porches. We do it incrementally. But now this one here, you can cut the wall sheathing at the porches. And this works the same way with trusses. You know, you might have a bigger gap if you want to just have a no steel behind your trusses. You're just going to have to kind of adjust those according to the size of those trusses. Okay, so quite a couple other things to talk about here. So I'm just going to jump into those. And for these, we're going to go into the 2D input. So I think last time we talked about lofts. You know, we're inputting floor systems here. And you can input interior walls and doors and windows here in the 2D mode. And a couple new things here that really are related to the walls. So I'm going to go just into the interior walls. I'm going to hit add, and a couple things here. One of the big items here is we have some new options for the top of these walls: ceiling line, roof line, and then custom. And I think what I'll do, I'll just quickly just throw in some different walls here. So I'm going to put into the front of the building, and it is important to keep an eye on these labels here because it kind of switches around on us. But I'm going to put in a ceiling line for the front. I'm going to switch over to roof line. I'm going to put one of those on the other side of this overhead door. And then for custom, I'm going to enter a 4 foot. So, and I'll put that one here towards the back of the building over here. So for the ceiling line, it's going to go, in this case, I have trusses here, I believe. So it's going to go to the bottom chord of the truss, basically. The roof line is going to go to the top of the roof framing. It's going to just go all the way to the top. This custom is where you can input the height itself. So I put in 4 foot for this one. And maybe just for fun here, or just to demonstrate, I'm going to put in towards the right this 4 foot. I'm going to put in a roof line towards the middle here. We'll see what happens when it's running perpendicular to the framing. And then ceiling line for this one to the left. We'll see if we can keep that all straight. So a whole bunch of walls there, which are different settings. We'll just see how they behave. And the other items here to point out is we did add in a foundation type of none. So for these interior walls, which I didn't set, I probably should have set those. But man, maybe, yeah, let's just, I mean, we don't really necessarily have time for this, but you know, one thing you can do, which is kind of nice, is I came in here and did those, but we can sweep select all those and just say delete. I'm going to add these back in. I'm just going to change this to none. So you can put in a foundation type of none. It's going to ignore all these things. It's not going to affect any packages that you have set up on any of these other type of foundations. And you can use these other foundation types for these walls if you want. These are just sitting on a slab. Though actually I don't think I have a slab in this building, but we're just going to put none for our foundation type. And then I'm just going to run through here. We're going to do ceiling line. I'm going to do one for roof line here. I'll maybe zoom in a little bit, makes it a little easier. And then we're going to do our custom 4 foot. We'll put that one here. Whoops. Here. And then I'm just going to do the opposite here. We'll put these in the middle just so we can see what happens here real quick. So you can get things done pretty quickly here. I'm not using the features where you can change up these dimensions. You can get these exactly where you want. You can come back here. And so once we're done with these, you can come in and click on these and you can adjust these, or you could change up the dimensions here. If you get this dimension and then click on this, we could change this to a different dimension. If we want that actually at 6, and then we could adjust this one. And this one I really didn't even want them there. So, okay. So I think that's going to give us all the new things. So it's really using none as a foundation, and then these different options for the wall heights here. And I'm going to hit return, I'll hit save, and then we'll just see what these different wall heights do. So it's going to frame those walls that we entered in. I didn't put any sort of finish on those. And we'll just take a quick look here. You can turn off the roof and take a look. Might be easier to, maybe we'll just turn off the shell and we can kind of see what happens. This is going to be a little bit difficult, but if we zoom in here and we'll just look at some of these different walls, and you can see that this one here, I believe, is going to the bottom chord of this truss. This one, this next one over here, kind of hard to see, but this one is going up to like the very top of the roof. So if you use that roof line, it's going to be going all the way up. I have these flush purlins. I believe it's just going up to the top of this purlin. If this purlin was up on top, you would get that going up to the bottom of that purlin. Some of these we might need to adjust. You know, I don't know. This one maybe should be going to the bottom of this flush purlin. If you guys do see things, you know, we can adjust these. You know, this is a good place for feedback. And then, of course, we had the additional wall that I put in here that should have been 4 feet. Where did that guy go? Did I not actually get that one in? Or is that maybe a bug? Let's go back here real quick. I thought I put in a 4-foot wall. So I'll click over to the interior walls. This interior 3, guess, did that one reset on me, or am I got kind of quick there where I re-put these in. But so anyway, I went back in here and reset that to a custom, and we'll see if that'll give us a 4-foot wall. But you get the idea. That really, you can put in any height that you want. So there's that 4-foot wall now. And I might run through those steps again just to make sure that the program didn't reset that on me or something. But so there's our 4-foot wall. So we have these different types of walls. You can see when you're running perpendicular here, I think going to the roof line and the ceiling line, yeah, you can see the same kind of concept going on here where this one's going to the ceiling. This one is going all the way up to the roof. So even right now, if you run these perpendicular, this is going up to the roof. I don't know if you want to use that one. You might want to be a little bit careful. And then this one, I don't know if it reset these on me or if it just put them, or if I put these at ceiling height. This one's at ceiling height too, but we could go back in and do any sort of custom wall height we want on those.
Change your trusses to scissors.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. If you do rafters, you're going to get a little bit different behavior on these, and also if we have scissor trusses, then you'll see with the ceiling height is really the one that is going to change here, right? So depending on where these are, I think this one to the roof line isn't really changing, but if you do have to the ceiling line, I guess we did have another one over here, but yeah, these are going to be different height walls depending on where they fall on the ceiling truss. What happens here with this guy? You can see that it is giving us like a rake at the top, and it is following that scissor line for this ceiling, the one that's set up with the ceiling height. So some pretty good flexibility there. Let us know if we need to make some adjustments or if these are not coming out exactly the way you would expect. We can make some changes here. And yeah, if you do rafters, it's going to be a similar concept going on with rafters. It should be following the ceiling line and the roof line, or your custom height that you input. Okay, I think that is everything that we wanted to go through today. Yeah, like he said, we're working on getting in second floors and putting walls on top of those second floors and keeping all that straight. And we are doing those awnings. We're going to finish off those awnings.
You still there, Sean?
Did we lose Sean?
I think we did.
Yeah, everybody hang on for just a second here.
Well, in the meantime, we did have a couple of questions come in on the chat. So
Yeah. Yeah. You want to read those?
We start at the top? Yeah. So Cam asked, will there be tokens for the new output categories? And the answer is yes, there are. As Sean mentioned, there are categories. The categories that we have right now they will follow the categories that you change. So if you have a document template, for instance, that has framing total price as one of the tokens that we have. There's still a framing total price unless you change the name of the framing category to be something else. But each of those categories that you set up, those output categories that you set up, are going to have their own total price and also total cost and total weight. The Excel file that you can output for job also reflects those categories. As you saw when Sean was doing the job, when you go to job review, the summary tab reflects those categories. There are a couple of outputs where you have options. You had options before of saying, do I want to include framing, sheathing, trim? And you could say, yes, I wanted framing and sheathing, but no trim. So now you have those categories are available there too. And then, so we've had people in the past ask for, hey, can I have an extra category to put some of my calcs on? When you set up package calcs or assembly calculations, you can specify those categories as where you want those things to go. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost
Yep,
my
you're
audio
back.
there.
All right.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something I did want to point out. I purposely left some of these broke. So you'll notice here in this job that I have 3 messages up here. And one of my packages is based on a labor, or I put the results of my calculation into a labor tab. And I do not have a labor tab anymore. I got rid of that, but I do have some packages. So you get some warnings. And then if we go to the packages in this case, this is for a different reason, but you can see that it has these in red here. So I had a couple packages that went into labor. This one here, I put in the labor category that no longer exists.
The output category.
Pardon?
Output
the output category. Yeah. Okay, so that one's blank. And as you can see, yeah, these represent or reflect these new tabs that I have set up. So I'd have to figure out where I want to put these. And in this case, maybe if I do roof versus wall labor or something, it might make sense to put this on roof. So we just change that category and we could come in and fix all these. I had a delivery that went to the freight tab that no longer, so maybe if we just want to send out our roof trusses with our initial delivery, we could put this delivery in the roof tab or whatever you want to do there. And then once you hit save, those will be fixed. We go back in the job, you won't see those messages. So yeah, that's something I definitely wanted to point out. Keep an eye out for those messages, review those, and then go back into your settings and clean that stuff up to make sure those are coming through properly.
And then also on the outputs, you go to outputs and look at some of those outputs that had the categories.
Yeah. So here's the job bid that I set up. So it does reflect these new categories that I set up. And do I have an old one? Whoops, did not mean to do that. I think I had an old one here. So this is something, yeah, I forget exactly, Mark, maybe you know or remember what happens here with the old job bids. I think this one's an older one that had the other categories and all these are checked.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess is probably what happened, what I had before. Like this one, I had no framing, but yeah, so I used to have just the everything but the framing, but now it doesn't even know what that framing is, and it kind of has all these checked.
Yeah. So basically, the way that this works is if you have an output report, when you come in to edit that output report, any categories that are referenced in that output report and still exist, like doors and windows and accessories, they're going to maintain the settings that they had before. And then any new ones that didn't have an answer for them just get turned on by default.
Yeah, okay. So you may need to come do adjustments on existing.
Yeah, so you'll want to review, if you do make changes to your output categories, you'll want to review your outputs and make sure that you don't have any issues with any of them.
Yeah. Okay. Looked like we had quite a few things coming in. Did you guys catch my audio to the end? I kind of dropped off. I don't know when I dropped off.
I don't remember the last thing that we heard you say, but
okay.
It sounded like you were pretty well wrapping up.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so we had those questions there. Duncan at FarrowBuild asked, can you stack skirt boards just on the interior? And the answer is yes. We have interior skirt board settings just like the exterior skirt board settings.
Yep, good question. I was going to mention.
And then he also asked, is there a way to build framing assemblies? And the answer is no, not yet, but it is something that we have talked about. That we will probably be implementing in the future. Irvin Zook asked if there was a way to break the wall metal at the porch truss area, but still include a material to close up that space. So what he's asking is there a way when you have that 9.5 inch, or if it was like a 3-foot heel of a common truss, could you have sheathing that goes up to the bottom of the mono truss, and then sheeting that starts up again at the top of the mono truss? The answer is yes. But then in the area in between, is there a way to have a different type of sheeting such as OSB? No. No, there isn't. Not to say that we couldn't do something like that, but.
Could you do that with wainscot wall and the upper sheathing?
You kind of could, unless you were already using wainscot and upper sheathing on that wall.
Yeah.
Like on this wall, you couldn't because you've already got wainscot on there. And then Arnulfo Martinez said, in the trial, we don't found the setting option. That is correct. In the trial version of the software, you don't have access to the settings. You would have to get in touch with sales and get set up with an actual account. And they said how to correct the mistake in a quickly form on the wall and get the quote faster. I don't know what he's asking there. Let's see. Doug asked any updates to the e-modeler function. Don't think there was any updates.
Boy. You know, there's one thing that I did want to cover again, or something else that I wanted to cover that I didn't cover. We do have a QR code. This is related to eModeler, but we have added a token for a QR code. And I guess maybe I didn't set that up fully on my on this beta system, but maybe, let's see, what's a good way to do this here? I guess if I go to the document template here, and if I click on the download of the latest stuff here, and hopefully, so yeah, so these are all the tokens for the templates, and we do now have a QR code. This links to that view.
Yeah, you're not sharing that.
I gotta switch my
there we go.
Sharing tabs. Okay. Yeah, so I downloaded the latest template that has all of the tokens that you can use. And we do now have this link to the QR code. Most people I think have seen these. Like sometimes you go to restaurants and you can open up the menu on these. You just use your phone. Usually it's with the phone, and if you have this like a software that will read these QR links, this will take you directly to the view only of the 3D model. So it's one of those things that we have that you can share with people by email. You can just send them a link. And now you can have this QR code where they can just point their phone at this and it'll immediately take them to just the 3D viewer of that particular job. So that's related to eModeler. So sorry, that's just something I forgot to mention that I wanted to mention. But what else was that question asking?
Just Doug said, very cool, thanks.
Okay.
Just fishing for more cool stuff. Cam asked, is there a way to set your interior wall framing to match the gable post spacing rather than eave post spacing? No, because your interior walls are supposed to be stud framed. So we didn't really even think about that. I think, if I recall correctly, the interior walls are going to use the gable post spacing if they're parallel to the gable, and the eave post spacing if they're parallel to the eave, but I could be wrong on that. It's certainly something that we can look into and make sure that we address the use cases that people have, because we don't use the software, we just write it. You guys are the ones who use it, so we try and do what you need it to do. Drew mentioned cantilever porches, and that's the one that Sean said we're working on for the next release, is some cleanup on those cantilever porches, the awnings as we call them in the UI. Okay, Cam said they seem to default to eave for me, and I guess that would make sense. Johnny asked, any updates on metal buildings?
I'd like to hop in. I'd like to hop in on
Go
that
ahead,
one,
Keith.
Mark.
Sure.
What is important to point out, I know just talking to customers and prospects that the demand for barndominium seems to be every bit as strong in all metal buildings. If you're doing primary and secondary framing out of, let's say, steel I-beams or even light gauge material, the demand seems to be huge for barndominium. So obviously the development work that we're doing on barndominiums should benefit everybody, regardless of whether you're using wood or steel for the primary frame. I'm also going to mention in an aside that we have quite a few users who are doing all metal buildings who want to use light gauge steel for interior framing, for stud framing. And so we already have a couple of innovative customers there who we're working with, so that we'll figure all the framing using light gauge steel. And we have some other technologies for light gauge steel. So we'll be downloading that data to roll forming files, so that people would be able to go directly from design it in SmartBuild to, push a few buttons and download data to roll forming machines to actually produce all the pieces that can go together without measuring, marking, or cutting. So if anybody has an interest in that kind of technology, just reach out to me separately. But we're working on that as a side project, even while we continue to move forward with all the features that we're showing in these webinars.
Okay. A couple of comments from people about the spacing of the posts in their divider walls. And again, to be honest, we've sort of been assuming that all your divider walls are going to be interior stud frame walls, so it didn't matter. But it sounds like that's an issue that we need to take a look at. So it seems like when when the divider wall is parallel to the gable, it should match the gable end wall spacing. And when it's parallel to the eave, it should match the eave spacing. Is that what people would like to see? Because obviously you can go into advanced edit and change the spacing on that wall to be whatever you want it to be. But by default, should it match the wall that it's parallel to if it's a post frame wall? Okay, Cam says we use post frame walls for a single interior demising wall quite often, which should match the gable wall. Should match the gable wall regardless of which way it's going.
So on the demising wall he's talking about, so we do a lot of farm buildings that have, you build an 80 by 200 overall building and they want to insulate 80 feet of it. So you put that wall in at 80 feet and 80 by 80 gets insulated in line, and the 120 is raw framing inside. So that's the most common divide wall in a farm building. It's not. It's a wall that goes floor to roof.
Mm-hmm. And that would have the same framing as the gable walls then.
Typically, we do, yeah.
Okay. And there was another comment. I tried to adjust it under advanced edit and it would not take any custom post spacings. And it's, there are two post spacings in advanced edit, unfortunately. One of the things that's sort of on the backlog is when you go into advanced edit for wall, it shouldn't show you the eave wall settings and the gable wall settings. It should just show you the settings that wall is going to use. And then, so you should be able to adjust it by adjusting the right one if you can figure out which one that is. The simplest thing is just change both of them. Dylan said typically we match the spacing on the parallel wall. So yeah, I'll have to look into that. And then in metal buildings, it would be nice if the interior walls didn't put an additional structural post in the main wall. I believe if the interior walls are stud frame walls, they no longer put, what they used to, they no longer put a post, structural post in the main wall. I think that if they're post frame walls, though, they do put a post in the main wall because you have to have somewhere to fasten the end of the girt that frames that wall. But I'm not sure, Johnny, on the main walls. I have to actually run that.
Could you make a user definable material for the end post? And the reason I say that, we would, if it comes out between columns, we don't need a structural post there. We'll simply put a 2x6 vertical stud, on that on the exterior girts to tie our girt framing, our interior girt framing to.
Okay. So you would frame it very similar to how you'd frame a stud frame wall at that.
Correct. Just had that
Yeah,
tie in. Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably quite a bit more work that we need to do on how people frame the intersections of those interior and exterior walls, and we will continue to refine that as we move forward. But certainly, all the input we can get is great.
So on a similar note, the infill stud walls between the exterior post frame, the post frame wall, you know, we fill 2x4 stud walls between the columns for drywall. Is there a way to add that?
There currently is not, other than with a package, but it is on the list of things that we want to address, which I can assure you is not a short list. But that item just moved up the list another notch because somebody mentioned it at a webinar. So yeah, like I said, we don't use this stuff, we just write it. So we have to lean on you guys to tell us what we want to do. Timothy asks, can we have the ability to rotate the metal on the job? Do you want it to continuously rotate or sort of spin around in the wind? I think what you're talking about is being able to run the metal siding horizontally instead of vertically, right? Yeah. So one of the things that we were just talking about the other day was, is it a true statement that metal sheathing always runs perpendicular to whatever it's being fastened to? Helicopter mode, yeah. So that if you have the standard post frame MO is you put up posts and then you put some girts running horizontally and then you run the sheathing across those girts.
So when doing a stud frame, if I may, when doing a stud frame, sometimes people don't want to put girts and they want to run their metal horizontally. And the only way to do that now is to create a whole new product to use the horizontal version of the product. And it'd be a lot better if it gives you the option, at least with stud frame. I know it doesn't make sense with post frame, but with stud frame, to have it vertical or horizontal. Because sometimes people put girts on them, sometimes people put OSB on them, and most of the time they want it running vertical, but then you still have those customers that want it running horizontal. And the way you're seeing is whether or not you add the purlin or the girts on, or purlins, or whatever you want to call them.
Right, and that's what I was getting at is
it changes there.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at is, would it be sufficient to say, if there's girts, the sheathing runs vertical. If there's not girts, it runs horizontal.
No, because sometimes they want to use OSB. And then put the metal right on the OSB. And that one would not have girts because you're using OSB.
Unless you put your OSB in as girts, which you can do. We've had people do that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you just put your OSB in as 8 foot long, 4 foot wide girts, 4 foot on center.
Okay.
I'm not saying that you should do that, but if you do that, then you'll get a layout for all your girts. And yeah, you can even. I think
ultimately, if we could just have like a drop-down tab that we could select on stud frame. If you use stud frame wall, let us select what it is that we want to do.
Yeah, and that kind of goes. And then, yeah, that kind of gets into assemblies, which someone asked about earlier, and how that interacts with assemblies, and and everything else. And also something we've talked about for a while now, and that is layers. So you put your girts up, and then for the sheathing, I want a layer of OSB, and then I want a layer of vapor barrier, and then I want a layer of vinyl siding.
That would be really nice.
Mm-hmm. It's coming. I can't tell you when, but it is on the list of things that we would like to do.
That's good.
Johnny asked about gutters and downspouts, and those are much further down the road, probably right around kitchen cabinets. We do want to do them. Gutters and downspouts, most people do gutters and downspouts right now just with packages based on the linear foot of eave and square foot of building, sort of gives you a general idea of how many downspouts you're going to need. Yeah, downspouts and gutters and downspouts is something we've talked about. Hydraulic doors. So I think you're talking here about like a hanger door that's a horizontal bifold. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So is that, I mean, you can do them now. You just say to your overhead door is a bifold. Hanger doors, yes, but not a bifold necessarily. I mean, it's, yeah, power lift. It's, I mean, it's a framed opening in the wall, right? So you're going to have a jam post on either side, and you're going to have a header across the top, and there won't be any sheathing in there. But there will be a door, and that door is just a part number with a price associated with it. So as far as that goes, we don't really care, right?
So it would be, if you look at it, it would have a sheeting product and trim product similar to a sliding door, because typically they're skinned on the site just
Okay.
like a sliding door would be.
Okay. And then, so I mean, you could do it with a slider, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the opening is framed more closely like an overhead door, but the panel is more like a sliding door, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you can frame the opening for a slider the same as you frame the opening for an overhead door.
Okay.
And then it's just the slider. It's really about the look of the slider and also the extra stuff that we put on for a slider. Because right now for a slider, you get your track board and your track support board and the track and the rub rail and all that other stuff that we do for sliders. I assume these doors wouldn't have that extra stuff.
That they would not. Yeah. So is there a way to, obviously we can set those materials, the track material, the track board, track cover, all that can be set to none. But the system looks at a left or a right or a split sliding door to know where to run the track. If you put a none, is there, you can set all those materials to none, but is there a way to not run a something out each side?
Yeah, I think what you're asking for, if I understand correctly, is the ability to say, I want a door that is like a slider. It's a panel that gets skinned and framed and trimmed and everything else. But it doesn't have all the other slider stuff associated with it.
Right. It would be a single panel, not a left or a right. It'd be a single panel. So right now the options are left, right, or split, and it would be none of the above.
Right.
I guess
Right.
my question was, if you say, if you set your, I've never tried it, so if you set your material for the track board, for the track cover, for the track, set all those materials to none, nothing will show up in there.
I haven't tried it either, but in theory, that
Okay.
could work. But it sounds like what you're after is it's a new door type.
It could mostly be done. I think it could mostly be done as a built
Or-
as a sliding door.
Or an option for a slider with a it's left right split or none. Or
That's the
horizontal
easiest one in
split.
my mind, but
Well,
it's still going to be
horizontal split
it's still
Yeah,
going to
so
call
horizontal-
it a sliding door, and that's
Yeah.
that's so how much if we already have all the sliding door parts available, what would it take to just copy and
Yeah, it would-
tweak that and call it
it would-
hydraulic door?
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want. It's not really necessarily a hydraulic door. It could be a pneumatic door. It could be a manual door, depending on how big it is. But if we had additional options on sliders, and so we've got left, right, and split. If we also had none and horizontal split, I think that would cover both a single panel framed door, skinned door, if you will, and also a bifold. You had an upper and lower section so it was like a split slider, but it was split horizontally. So you would get two panels. You'd have all the framing and sheathing and trim you need for those two panels. They would just be split horizontally at the center of the height of the door.
Right, and answered the question about the track cover does not show up if it's set to none, so it pretty much covers it. I think you could get by with building it as a sliding door, and then on your outputs it's going to say sliding doors, this size sliding door, and then you'll edit it.
Yeah, and that's where
your Word document. So
yeah, that's where it might be useful to have another type of door, where it's not a slider, it's I don't know what we called it. We probably don't call it a hydraulic.
a swing door.
Yeah. So, well,
It could be a swing, or because there's the same basic, or just call it a hanger door. That would cover them all.
okay. And the slider is a hanger door that slides left and right. And you could have a slider door that slides. You have a bifold slider door that slides up.
Be a bifold.
The other ones just go up like an old style garage door, right? You just sort of pivot
I'm
up.
not that old, Keith.
It's just that I'm just trying to picture how this door opens. So it's like a slider door, but instead of sliding sideways on a track, it's just got a hinge at the top, and you just raise it up and hope it doesn't hit you in the
Swings
head,
out.
or it swings out.
Hinges on top, swings out.
Oh. Okay. I was picturing some fancy system where it would pivot up and swing sort of up and into the building. But
There's some that do that.
yeah, and so it's like there's a lot of variations, right?
There is.
Yeah, and so trying to come up with how to I've always said software developers. We're omnipotent, but not omniscient. So the challenge is always, how do you tell the software that's what you want to do? And how do you tell the software that's what you want to do in the same way that someone else tells the software that they want to do the same thing? And that's where, it's a hydraulic door. From where you're standing, it's pretty simple. It's straightforward. It's a hydraulic door. But someone else is going, hey, I got this thing I want to do. And then we have to, support has to tell them, oh, yeah, that's a hydraulic door. What? Why do you call it a hydraulic door? Well, a hydraulic door because somebody told us we should call it that.
I think what's most common, there's in the hangar, what I think most people consider a hangar door is either the top hinge everything swings out. That's most commonly called a hydraulic door. Then your bifold door hinges on top and folds in the center, folds out. Then there's one more that, like you said, comes up, the top third comes up inside the building, the bottom 2/3 swings out. So basically 3 designs, but I think for a simple fix, if you could make, and we can probably get most of it using sliding doors, but if we could get it to look right on the outside, we can put whatever price behind it we need to on the inside. So your 3D view looks good. It'd be a single panel, trimmed and sheeted. And one common option with those is windows in the panels. Windows, entry doors, things like that can be added to the panel.
Yeah, so Brandon said we typically use high-fold or Schweitz for our bifold doors, and Dave pointed us to the power lift doors.
We've used about 5 or 6 different ones, so they're all similar.
Yeah. Timothy says, so it's a movable wall, kind of. So this one here is actually a movable wall. It's got doors and windows in it, and then the whole thing just lifts up and out of the way so you can get your plane in there. And then these ones are more like this guy, where it's a big panel with windows in it, and the whole thing just tilts up and out of the way.
Got the insulation liner package.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Hey, that's really cool. We should support that. But we don't yet. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of notes here, so we'll definitely get this into our system and get it on the map, the roadmap.
Yeah, I think it probably starts with, if you just had the ability to say, okay, that's what I want. It's just a panel that gets framed and sheathed and trimmed, and then if we could circle back later and give you the ability to add doors and windows to your power lift door.
Hanger door.
Yeah, would it be useful if you just had the ability to do a solid panel on it with maybe wainscot?
It would be useful, and it would get the visual. I think that's what's important.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we'll do a little head scratching and figure out how best to get that in there, and then we'll keep you posted as we get ready to roll it out. Probably not this release, and probably not next release, but some release after that. All right. Yeah, so it's like a slider in the sense that it creates another panel that needs to get framing for it. So you've got the metal studs and girts and everything else that make up the frame for that panel, just like a slider door does. And then you've got sheathing on the front, on the outside, and potentially sheathing on the inside, and the trim around the edges and everything else. But then when it comes to all the ancillary stuff that you get for a slider, like the track board and the track support board and the track and the track cover and the rub rail and all that other stuff, you wouldn't have any of that stuff for one of these doors, correct?
That's correct. You might have, as long as you have your bottom edge calc based, really, you could add multiple trims or weather seals to your edges. And you have your edge trim and your bottom trim for the visual. And these are all, I don't know anybody that manufactures these on site. These are all built to order steel frames. And then the only thing we're adding to it is sheeting and trims. So having the framing materials isn't even necessary.
Okay. Well, you can set those to none.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then you'd probably need some kind of package or something that would calculate or at least make a guesstimate of the price of the frame itself, because you're going to buy that from somebody else. But
yeah, you could if you have them, if you have them quote several, or you could come up with a covering number, I guess, on based on square footage or width by height, or
a reasonable guesstimate.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. All righty. Well, anything else we want to cover? Thank you guys so much for this. This is always eye-opening when we have these meetings and people go, "Hey, I'm trying to do this." And why do you want to do that? So, as someone who doesn't build post-frame buildings for a living, it's always great to talk to you guys, because this is your software that we're creating. So.
Yep.
All right.
Okie doke. All right, thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
Talk to you next time.